And good afternoon, everyone. I'm your girl, Jeanette Smith, certified life strategist and mindset coach, back with another day in this beautiful journey that you all have been taking with me, the 21-day release devotional. And it all comes out of my book, published just before the pandemic. Who knew that this was the journey God was taking us on for a pandemic? I didn't know, but this has been a beautiful 21-day journey, and I'm so glad to be doing it with you all. Can you believe we're at day 19? Day 19 already. And I see you all coming in the room. Thank you so much. Good to see you. Good to see you, Patrick. Good to see you, Michael. Everyone, I hope you're doing well on a Saturday. I see you coming in throwing kisses. I like that leopard print mask you got going on there, Justina. You better do function and fashion all in one swoop. Yes, I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Thanks so much for asking. Hello, Helen. Good to see you. Peggy, great to see you too. I hope you all are going to take advantage of what looks like a nice day. I don't know if you can stand outside and get some fresh air in your backyard or on your roof. Hello, good morning. Well, it's actually afternoon, Neil, but we'll take it. Good to see you, family. So glad that you all have gathered around. I have told you every day we've joined together. Hey, Cherie, every day we've joined together around this material, how God has been really doing some interestingness through the material shared with you, and then also through the presenters that have been either guided my way, put on my mind, or shared with me. Today is no exception. I knew you meant afternoon, no biggie. And so we gather, hey, West Coast, good to see you. And so we gather today around this topic of surrender. And for those of you who are either watching live or on replay, and hello, by the way, I didn't do my hellos across all platforms, 3 across Facebook, and those who have shared, go ahead and share now if you want to get more hearts and minds gathered up in this community around this topic of surrender. YouTube, thank you. Share, take the code. You could even text it to somebody. Go ahead and share. Periscope, I love you. I see you over here. Thanks for kissing my face with your hearts. It's just another great day to find out more about ourselves, because the more we learn about ourselves. Oh, look who's in the house. Hey, Toya. I see you. Another one of our great presenters. Thank you, Mom, for popping in. As we learn more about ourselves, there is a space and place where even more illumination into what's next can happen. You think you know yourself. You think you understand yourself. What's up, Clint? You think you know, who you are and how you are, until you're hit with something like a pandemic, until you're hit with a different life circumstance and you have to make decisions. And then there you are trying to figure out how to manage the thing that most of us buck against, which is change, and how we accept change, how we lean into it. And I think that surrender is a big part of that. If you know anything about psychology, one of the most difficult things for us as people to receive is uncertainty. And so what does it mean to surrender? Many of you are having to make those decisions now. And I pray that this is a topic that is going to really bless you and help illuminate some things as we move forward. Our grounding scripture is Psalm 46:10, translated often to be still and know that I am God. But when we look at the Hebrew root of be still, understanding that it actually translates to be and to let go. And so everything we do, this is your filter. How do we get to the place of letting go, releasing it, whatever it is for you, and knowing that God is? And for those of you who are coming in from all other faith beliefs, love you, because you have shown to me such great character in that you just meet me at the place where you understand God to be. And so we have a great time, and today is no exception. Let me introduce my guest. She's new to me, and so I'm going to be learning about her as you learn about her. But let me tell you, the sister is heavy. And you know what I mean when I say heavy? The sister's heavy. She comes with credentials. She comes with life experience and know-how and knowledge. She's a scholar, an activist, a preacher, a teacher. I like to see women flowing in all their gifts. And so it's exciting when people close to me introduce me to and expand my circles into meeting people that are doing things on a large scale in different ways. So would you all get your emojis together, that radical hospitality you become so famous for, and welcome as I bring forth Reverend Dr. AnneMarie Mingo today. Well, I was about to say good morning again. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. So glad to see you. Glad to be on here with you today, Jeanette.
And I want you all to know, she found out about this. You talking about an 11th hour thing. She found out about this late last night. And our guest that was to be with us, Reverend Betty Wright Ring, I'm messing her name up now. Our guest who was to be with us is not able to be with us. And so she consented, prayed about it, and said, okay, I don't even know what all y'all doing, but I'm going to jump in it with you. So we thank her for trusting the process and jumping on. So thank you all for giving up the hearts and the love. They are, let me introduce the crowd to you. They are some loving folks who just want to hear about life experiences wrapped around this word and how can they get out of it something meaningful for this day and moving forward. So the power of surrender. We're going to go to our scripture, y'all. But before we get to it, I like to share my platform so that women in particular are able to talk about what God has accomplished in their lives, which sometimes can be hard for us. Society doesn't always make that easy, but on this platform, that's what we do. So would you mind introducing yourself today and through all the things that God has allowed you to accomplish and bring forth?
Okay, well, again, good afternoon, everyone. Certainly an honor and pleasure to be here with you today. And I also want to give thanks and shout out to my brother and sister, Reverend Patrick and Reverend Cherie Claiborne, who helped to extend this invitation. And a part of the reason that they extended the invitation is something that I did a week or so ago for a group of young people in my denomination, the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Each year during the month of March, the young people focus on self-denial, this denial of self as they focus on other things. And as they were giving insights and sort of focal areas, they asked me to talk about my journey, right? So similar to your question about how is it that, what has God allowed me to accomplish? I was talking about my journey and my career path. And in doing so, I mapped out this thing and they gave me 3 minutes. I'm like,
how can I do my life in 3 minutes?
I'm like, 3 minutes. I'm speed talking like a auctioneer or something, trying to get it all out. But this is a part of what I shared. So I'll share now a part of what I shared. I talked about the importance of having role models or people that you see doing what you would like to see yourself doing in the future. And a part of that is the visualization of at least having something to look for. Even if you don't fully understand what it is that they do, it gives you a way of creating a path. Yeah. And so for me, that looked like focusing in on my older cousin, who was my big role model, Sandra. And she was this great business person. She was an accountant. I was in the 4th grade. I didn't know what in the world an accountant did, but I knew she was good in math and she did stuff with computers. Now, mind you, this is like 1980 or something, and so computers then meant something very different. But I decided at that point, I'm going to be like my cousin. I'm going to be a businesswoman and I'm going to be an accountant. So I started taking extra math classes. From the 4th grade, I was telling everyone I would be an accountant. All the way through my 2nd year at FAMU. So I was an accounting major in the School of Business and Industry. And within the School of Business and Industry, we're required to do internships. And one of my internships was with GE Capital. I was in their financial management program, this highly competitive program to get into. I was living in Stamford, Connecticut for that summer, every day going to work and every day feeling miserable. I was like, this is what I'm going to have to do as an accountant. Accounting is not for me.
Not mine.
But I've been focused on this since the 4th grade, right? I've been telling everybody this since the 4th grade.
Right.
But the reality was that wasn't the best for me. Right. And so I had to get clear about that, and God had to speak to me about that. And so I remained in business, but that next semester when I went back to FAMU, I switched and became business administration, which allowed me to focus more on marketing. And so that brought my creative gifts together, right? That brought my organization and administration gifts together. That became much more of a sweet spot for me. And so it wasn't a struggle. So we talk about surrender, getting to the point that even if you're on a path, that you're open to allowing God to shift and adjust your path. It may not take you completely out. So I didn't move out of business, but it was an adjustment to do something that was more inherently within my gifts.
Yeah.
And so I, stayed that, graduated with my bachelor's in business administration, and went to Procter and Gamble. And so I was still going to be this big corporate woman. So I'm running all of these businesses. I'd been a brand manager. So I was the brand manager for Head and Shoulders, big
Awesome.
businesses that we know, right? Brand manager for Secret Deodorant. I hope y'all are using something, even if you're home and not taking as many showers, right? Take care of your body. So I was doing all of these big businesses. I, at one point, transferred still with Procter and Gamble to Orlando. And so I reconnected with my church there, St. Mark AME. Prior to that, let me just say this. Prior to that, when I was still in Cincinnati, God laid on my heart to begin doing some fitness things, right? So I went through a certification process and became a group fitness instructor. So this whole long course, had to take these exams, all of this stuff. And I thought I was going to be teaching aerobics, gospel aerobics.
Okay. All right now.
I'm like, okay, I'm gonna still be doing this corporate stuff. I was a Girl Scout leader, doing all of this stuff in the community. God, I'm serving and helping you in these ways. This is what I'm gonna do. God was like, nope, that's not what you're going to do. You got certified. Right. You'll be prepared for where I'm sending you. And so when I went to Orlando and again got connected with St. Mark, God led me to start a dance ministry there. And so in starting that dance ministry, my preparation and getting certified in group fitness allowed me to make sure that their bodies were being conditioned to give their best for God, right? Awesome. So I had my mindset on, I'm going to be teaching gospel aerobics. And God was like, it'll be fitness. Working their hearts. Right. It'll be to minister for me in a different way, right? Yeah. So just along the way, as you see, I'm always trying to go down these paths. But what I've learned is to stay open to listening to where God says, the preparation, you thought it was for this, but let me show you how I'm going to use it.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
So I'm there in Orlando. I'm still working for Procter and Gamble. I realized, you know what? I could get my MBA while I'm still with the company, and they'll pay for it. They may give me another raise, but this will be a raise. So I went and I got my MBA. And as I was doing that, I got called back to Cincinnati to the headquarters. But I was still trying to do all of this work. And in the midst of all of that, I was flying back and forth every weekend for classes. And I heard God call more clearly than ever before. Now, mind you, I'd been speaking. I'm AME, grew up, church, right? Been doing public speaking since I was 2. First Easter speech, I'm pretty sure, was Happy Easter, everybody. Right? But I was 2 and I got it. I hit it. I did my line and I did not have to be coached. Started competing in speaking, oratorical contests, all of these things from age 7 on, right? So then I began speaking in churches in the 8th grade. As the youth speaker for the Youth Sunday and all of these types of things. And so folks would say, girl, you're going to be a preacher. Look at you preaching. And I'm like, God ain't called me to that. Don't put that on me. But after a while, I was clear that God was calling me to those things. And so, but what God's call was for me, it was for me to preach, to teach, to do organization and administration, and to do global outreach and inreach. As I went through a very intense period of fasting, I did an absolute fast, first and only time God has called me to that. I got very clear and I wrote everything out. And God was making all of these matches and connections. And so as I answered it, on the weekend that I graduated with my MBA from Rollins College, I was there in Orlando. That Sunday is the Sunday that I walked down and told my pastor that I had been called to preach, right? Wow. So God was shaping and moving and shifting. So I've just finished 1 degree. I'm headed back to Cincinnati. And within a year, I was in seminary at Princeton Theological Seminary. And so all of these things began to just force me to do what my favorite scripture tells me, which is that all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to God's purpose. All of those things, whether they were exactly as I saw them or really the way that God saw them for me, were working together for my good. And so I, left my corporate job, sold one of my houses, got rid of my BMW because I figured, I got this Camry too. And a Camry can go to just the regular auto place to get a oil change. Right. I'm not going to have the money to be taking care of this BMW anymore. Went to seminary, went to Princeton, moved all of my stuff. And again, the call had been to preach, never pastor, to preach,
Right.
to teach. And in that teaching, I assumed that the teaching meant Christian education within the church. So I would be constructing curriculums, teaching Bible studies. That's where I saw myself bringing all of these strengths together, doing some organization and administration, perhaps becoming an executive pastor at a church. That's what I saw. I was already down this path. And God said, no. In my last year of seminary, God said that teaching is to be in the academy. And so my parents are educators. And my dad had always said, don't go into education. Ain't no money in education. What are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you going to leave this? How are you going to make money? All of that stuff, right? And so here I am having to listen to what God is telling me, which is to go into education, which is to go into that aspect of teaching, not only teaching in the church, which I do also, but God said, I'm going to expand the scope of what I'm calling you to do. And a part of that is going to be teaching within the academy. And to do that, you now need to go and get your PhD. Now, mind you, this is my last year of seminary. And I'm not prepared for this. Roz, I see you on here. You remember this story as I was there serving at St. James. And so this is the fall of my last year of seminary. I didn't know I'm not the best test taker, all that GRE and all that foolishness. And so I had 10 days. 10 days to prepare to take the GRE so that I could take it in November and take it again in December to have at least 2 scores to consider so that I could apply. 10 days. And so God allowed me to prep all of this stuff. I was also traveling to a conference at that same time, the American Academy of Religion. So I'm driving from Princeton to Philadelphia every day to go to this conference, sitting in the lobby at the hotel, trying to study a GRE words vocab book. Trying to meet people, trying to understand this process. And God opened up the door in ways that I never would have imagined. Not only did I score well enough to get into certain schools, but I got into my first and second choice schools on the first go round. And folks were like, people don't do that, but God told me to do this. So, and it was odd because, not odd, this is just the way God works. So when I was preparing to go to seminary, I only applied to one place, because God told me to go to Princeton Theological Seminary. I'd never been there. I didn't know anything really about that, but that's what God said. So that's what I applied. I wasn't, why waste my writer's times of writing me letters of recommendations for all of these schools that God didn't tell me to go to? And so I got in. And so I was having that same conviction around applying for the PhD. And folks were like, people don't do that. You need to apply to X number of schools. My writers, right? So my mentors were even saying, you've got to apply to X number of schools. And so I said, okay, but these are the only 2 that I plan to go to because this is what God said. And so God opened those doors in the way that I got into my first and my second choice on that first go round. And I got money. Right. So not just the regular money, got money on top of it. And so that's a part of surrendering into what God is telling you to do, even if it doesn't make sense to others, even if it has not been the path or the way that others have made it. So again, everybody's saying you don't do that. But this is what God said. And so getting clear enough with myself and comfortable enough with myself and the relationship that God has had with me all of this time allowed me to surrender into that. And so I end up at AnneMarie University. I do my PhD in social ethics, or that's what I was going there to do. And my first year, the 2 men that I had gone to do this work with, this was going to be my project. I was going to look at the Black church and a dialogue with business. All right. Black church. I told you I've been Black church all my life, AME all my life. And I had come out of this corporate world. And this is the time when the banks were failing. All of these other types of corporate greed was really starting to show up. Even Martha Stewart was in jail, like all of that stuff. And so I figured there is a space and there is work that the Black church can show the corporate world even about faith and about doing business with integrity and about having an ethical commitment, right? And so that was going to be my focus. But in my first year, or at the very end of my first year of this PhD program, the 2 people that I went there to do this work with, to study with, left within 10 days of each other. So I'm like, well, Lord, now what is this here? You told me, you told me to come down here. You had me interview with these people. They had these connections. But the interesting thing, at least for me, is that in that same first year, in the class of one of those persons, and they went on to fabulous things. One became a president of a university. One became a dean of another institution. So they were doing great things. But in one of those classrooms, I wrote a paper about Black church women and young people during the civil rights movement and how they had been on the front lines and what that really looked like. That ultimately became my project. And so my PhD, my dissertation, everything looks at Black church women during the civil rights movement. And I developed an ethic and a theology out of their lived experience. So I interviewed over 40 women who were grassroots women, women that people didn't know, women like my mom, right? So my mom had been a protester and a sit-in person in Tallahassee, Florida, while she's a student at FAMU at Florida A&M University, along with her sister. They were natives of Tallahassee and scared that somebody was going to see them and tell their mama. They weren't scared of the white folks pouring something over them or hitting them or doing anything. They were scared of their mama finding out. And yet they did it. And that was a part of what I was trying to understand. What is it about this faith and about this conviction and about this desire to make things better for others that has allowed Black women who are religious and Christian in particular to do this work for others, right? Not just for themselves, but to take those risks to make things better for others. And so that ultimately has become my project. That was my dissertation. That's what my first book is going to be about. But throughout all of this, I hope that you can see and hear that there were times when I was down this path and God said, let me show you. This is where it's going to go. Going down another path, let me just adjust you. This is where you're going to go. The thing, though, is that I kept walking, right? That I kept going down a path until God changed me, until God shifted me. And so that's a part of, how God has allowed me to accomplish the things that I've accomplished, and how I think even when it doesn't make sense to others, my commitment to doing what God is calling me to do in the face of whatever else has allowed me to just keep going, to keep moving forward.
I appreciate that. I turn off this alarm on my phone, kept going off for some strange reason. I appreciate you sharing your story. It's as you saw and as you read, incredible in not only my hearing, but in that those that know you and those that don't know you. I'm going to come back to a question that came up for me, but I want to get to our scripture, our foundational scripture, because there are many things that I hear in you that we have similarities about. And so I wonder if some of your struggles are similar to some of my struggles. And we'll circle back around to it. Thanks so much for sharing your story. Absolutely. Absolutely. Amazing testimony. Amazing. Let's look at where you all intersect with this story. You got a nice macro level view of one woman's journey to find and fulfill her purpose from 4 years old to where she is now, and all the twists and turns that came with. And they actually sounded really pretty in this retelling and recounting. I'm sure they weren't always that pretty. But now we're going to drill down a little bit more, and we'll get into the scripture. And then also, I'm going to share with you the meditation out of the book, which is a highly personal story for me, but I feel like it will let you look at surrender in a different way. So here we are in Mark chapter 8. It's verse 35. I'm going to give it to you in the NIV, and then we're going to look at the Message. Jesus is talking. We're learning more about him, and I always say that Jesus was one of the best life coaches ever. He was just awesome life coach. And he starts by saying, "Whoever wants to be my disciple, whoever wants to follow in my ways, whoever wants to model their life around the teachings that I'm sharing, those people have to take up their proverbial cross and follow me, whatever your cross is," right? And then he goes on to say, "For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it." So, of course, those of you who are just meeting me at the place of seeing the Bible as a historic document of wisdom, you're like, well, what do you mean? Do you mean like really lose my life? Like take my life, lay my life down? We never know. But let's go to the message. Because sometimes, as you'll see in my story, I almost had to lay my life down. Calling the crowd to join the disciples, he said, anyone who intends to come to me, to come with me, has to let me lead. You're not in the driver's seat. I am. Do not run from suffering. Embrace it. Follow me, and I'll show you how. Self-help is no help at all. Self-sacrifice is the way, my way, to saving yourself, your true self. Well, what good would it do to get everything you want and lose the real you? What could you ever trade your soul for? So much to unpack in this little thing. This little verse.
Absolutely.
You're not in the driver's seat. Any professed perfectionists, control freaks, throw up your emojis right now. Here's one hand. Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
Right? Because, and I'm going to tell you where it gets really dicey and hard. When God has gifted you to do things really well at a very high level and make very few mistakes. I see y'all. Throw them hands up. Come on. There you go. When you can perform and execute at a very high level, it gets really hard sometimes to take your hand off.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
Because we often feel that we actually are in control. And that's the fallacy, you know. We're never ultimately in control. God is always in control. And it's in those times when we hit the humps, the bumps, the points where we realize this really isn't my strength.
I'm not in control.
Right. What you mean? What are you doing? Right. This has always worked. Those become some of my things, but I've always been able to do this.
Right.
This has always worked. But I've always been able to. Heck, right now, the reason I was rushing coming to get back in was because I was trying to get a quick walk in because this whole Corona stuff, honey.
Right.
And it used to be, well, I've always been able to just walk for 2 weeks and get the weight back. No. Right. I'm not even in control of that. Right. So how dare we think we're in control of so many of these other things? God is really the one guiding and orchestrating and putting things in place.
And how you come to find that out can be through big things. It could be through little asks. Mm-hmm. It could be a little ask. Like she was asked to come off of her schedule of whatever she thought and God presented an opportunity. And however, you had to decide to process that. Because I think that's how God gets us best, is in the little things. It's like, you don't have to, but should you?
Right.
You don't have to, but should you? Is there something in this beyond what you think you see in it? It says, don't run from suffering, embrace it. I want y'all to see that there is the philosophy in Buddhism about things aren't good or bad. You just accept them as for what they are, right? And so I like thinking about that in terms of helping us not run from things, because if we can meet things with acceptance, experiences, loss, whatever it is, a challenge, and we can try to meet it where it is, which is part of the release circle. Y'all know, we say, feel it, whatever it is, feel it. Don't not feel it. Don't try not to feel it. It's there for a reason. Feel it, but then face it and give it place. I like to say, dance with it, have a conversation with it, figure out what this is. So often things happen in our lives, situations come up, feelings, emotions, whatever it is, and we make a judgment on it before we even come to know it. Nope, don't want that. Nope, don't want that. Nope, don't, and so we bubble wrap ourselves because we're trying to protect ourselves. But what we're really doing is we're isolating ourselves from a full life experience and probably some of the best lessons we'll ever get, because it's going to come back around. You just missed it on that one. Speak a little bit from your vantage point about not running from suffering. embracing it?
You know, I'm actually still working through this.
I think we all are.
Yeah. And so as you were just speaking, I was like, Lord, this is what my therapist has been trying to get me to focus on. Seriously. Because honey, I'm a preacher who believes in prayer, in praise, and going to see somebody.
Right.
And if that person tell you to get on some pills, do that too. Shoot,
Yes,
whatever
yes.
it takes. But anyway, my therapist has been trying to make me focus in on pausing and not rushing through something, right? Allowing myself to feel and to name whatever that feeling is, to not just say, okay, yep, I feel a little uncomfortable. No, what is it there? To sit in that for a moment, so that I can then identify it, face it. And she's like, feel where it's showing up in your body, right?
Yes.
Pay attention to all of those things. This is a part of that embrace, in a sense, of what you're talking about, a part of this dance, a part of this communication. And a lot of that is with ourselves, right? And so being comfortable enough to be uncomfortable in these moments allows us to ultimately get to better portions of freedom, right?
Yes.
So that we aren't stumbling and struggling through the same things in the same way constantly, because we've rushed past it. And so when we're able to actually sit in it, to recognize it, to name it, to define it, to then say, oh, so that's what this is? Okay, you don't have this power right now anymore. I'm going to release you because you're not serving me, right? I can name the actual thing and say, but you're not serving me. So I can release that part. That takes work, right? That takes work, and that takes time. That takes sitting still for a moment, right? And not constantly going.
It takes the pause. You talked about the pause.
Pause.
Because even in trying to get through that process, we'll go, oh, okay, that's the process. Let me work the process. No, along the way, you have to stop. I'm gonna pull back up, y'all, our process that we do with the women's release experience. And shout out to my sister, Reverend Riri. And I saw you. You're a work in progress. We're all a work in progress.
Yes, absolutely.
Toya, I saw you. You said you just walked through this morning. That's how it'll be. That's how it'll be sometimes. Absolutely. You'll come face to face. Be still and know. Be still. Yeah. You know, we said that even the Hebrew root of that phrase, be still, means release it and know, which for me is a whole nother connotation, because I can be still and still hold on to it.
Yeah.
Still and still, but release it and know that I am God. That, sit in it, that right there. Y'all, for those of you who are, let me control feelings, yes, that's what we want. It goes back to the control. So let's go back as we talk about the process, because what Reverend Dr. AnneMarie just shared was what we've been trying to share this whole journey. Feel it, sit with it, face it, have a conversation with it. Don't judge it bad or good. Just feel it, understand it. When you face it, you give focus to it. You allow yourself to give focus to it. Not only your own focus, but God's focus. Where focus goes, energy is able to flow. What energy do you now give to it? Right? Understand it. Is this here for my protection, or is it rejection? We tend to put things in very small labels. We only have like 2 or 3 things this could be. If it feels difficult or uncomfortable, it must be bad. Right? Not understanding that it could be, it may not be rejection, it may be protection. Once you're able to do that, that's where the surrender comes in the trust. Because once you get to that place of acceptance and surrender, then you can release it. And that's what we're talking about in this process, is being able to find your flow, to trust God, that even when these things happen and pop up, these challenges, these losses, these unexpected things, many of you have been dealing with several of those types of issues in this time, knowing that it's a part of the process. Let me figure out what part. Because for some of you now, I know some of my clients, I had 2. One who has a job on hold, one who lost their job. And she was going to melt out. And then I had to remind her, you hated this job.
Like, God is opening this up for you. Don't you see that?
Girl, how many sessions did we talk about your coworkers, them parents? Like, so because now it was moved for you, it has to be bad, versus no, 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 no. This is God's protection and
Yes.
redirection.
Yes.
This isn't rejection. And that's why you won't get there to understanding that until you sit with it and
Yeah.
really think through it. And as Reverend Dr. AnneMarie said, and sometimes you need help. Sometimes you just need somebody to bear the weight up with you and give you perspective so that you can see it from a different angle.
Well, and then some of the times, which we all know, we pray for things.
Right.
And God answers in the way God desires to answer them and what will be best for us.
Right.
It may not be exactly what we think though, right?
Right.
So in this example that you're sharing, I'm sure that the sister had been praying, Lord, if you just give me, I just need a, and now God has said, okay, great, got it, here's your answer. But it didn't look exactly the same. And so it brings up anxiousness and anxiety when we don't remember, wait a minute, this is actually what I prayed for. This happens to be the response.
Absolutely. And it usually is not the one we were looking for, as you said. Thank you, Angela. I see you. You're watching primarily from your phone, so you can't comment, but you stopped to hop on your laptop and say this has been enlightening. Thank you for both your contributions. Got to hop off, but I'm still. That's some dedication right there. I see you, Angela. Thank you.
Be safe, Angela.
I know, be safe. But she pulled over and got on the laptop. And yes, Reverend Riri, that's a whole nother connotation. Sitting still with and holding on to something and releasing. Two different things. I see you, Roz. You said you're saying ouch and sitting with it, convicted and encouraged. Savala says God is working on us so he can work through us, but being on that potter's wheel at times can be very painful. But the purpose will always be to help us and not harm us. Absolutely. I want to thank you all because this is the part that makes these devotionals so special, because you are all actually help minister to one another as we're, working to minister to you. I'm going to share out of my devotional.
Can I just say one thing about Savalis's comment? It's just right? Where we're sitting on these potter's wheels, or sitting on the potter's wheel, recognizing that when a potter's wheel is going, it's moving, right?
Yes.
It's in motion until the shaping and the forming gets to where the potter needs it to be. And then it may stop for a moment, then it may go into motion again. And then some more adjustments are made. And then we move into firing and all of those other types of things. There are times when we really are still in motion. Yes. And we think it's time for us to stop, but the potter is still making some adjustments. And then when it's time, we can move into the next stage of how we will be used in what the potter has created and constructed us to be for that moment in that season. So yeah, sometimes it is a challenging process, but we have to trust those hands. And again, that's where I come back to the all things work together for good. Sometimes I have to pause and say, God, now where is the good in this? Right? Am I at the good? Is this the good? Okay, I'm still moving. All right. I trust that whatever is going is still working for that good. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love the imagery because the potter's wheel is circular. When we were talking about the release process, this isn't the only release, but this has worked for me. This is what I learned out of my cancer journey. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that whole thing about everything is circular, that it's moving circularly, that you'll pass one test on this level and you'll think you got it. And nope, we're back into it again. Oh, it's another level of challenge. And now I learned to release that now. And hopefully we're building muscle. Yeah. So every time we're shaped and formed, that as we're becoming more and more of who God called us to be and staying on the path for what, trust is key. Because we trust that God is molding us into what we need to be beyond what we imagine we need to be. Any job that we think we need to be in, any vocation, anything of that nature. Absolutely. So let me share. This is for me a turning point in surrender. I have always trusted that I was in God's hands. When you're 20 and you start dealing with health challenges, I had cancer, you learn very quickly, you better learn how to trust God, right? This situation was a little different from me because what I had done at that level was I trusted God and I trusted God's agents to help me, to assist me, right? So here it was over 15 years ago. I say, I'm just going to read it like this because if I don't, I might get emotional. So I'm just going to stick with the words. I remember this incident so clearly. I was laying on the ER gurney about to go into surgery for the second time in 24 hours. I had come through a successful and necessary hysterectomy. Aside from balancing the emotional weight of the matter, my body was feeling great. I was laughing and joking with my mom and friends in the room, and then the surgeon came in to inform me that I had become septic. They had somehow snipped a part of my intestine, and I needed emergency surgery. Lying on that cold gurney, the surgeon walked over to me and had a facial expression that did not reflect the confidence that you would expect to see. He said, "Miss Smith, I need you to know the intricacies of the surgery." He paused. "Well, the seriousness of the situation." And in that moment, I exhaled and I turned the entire situation over to God. I laid, I paused, I sat with, I had conversation with, I embraced the seriousness of this situation I found myself in. The fear I saw in the doctor's eyes, the outcome and my questions, all of that stuff, I put it at Jesus's feet. Let's pause for a second.
Yeah.
Nobody ever wants to go into surgery and see fear in your surgeon's eye.
Lord Jesus, no.
And then really what control? Remember we talk about control.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a producer at heart. And my mind would start to think of, okay, well, how can I fix this? Maybe there's somebody else that could be, and my mind is going a bazillion different directions on how I can make this better for me. And in that moment, I had to say, the master physician's going to have to grab this one.
Yeah.
I can't, what control do I have laying here? I'm about to get anesthesia. I can't call somebody else in. I don't know any other doctors. I mean, exactly, Toya. And that was when I was there in Atlanta. And so in that moment, I grabbed the surgeon's hand and replied, "Look, you do what you know how to do. I'm going to do what I know how to do. And this is all going to be fine."
Yes.
I don't recall taking time to reflect on what he said before I replied. Those words just came flying out of my mouth with such boldness. What I knew to do was surrender and pray. My surgeon must have been inspired to some degree because he walked away looking a tad more poised. Praise God, the surgery went fine. I'm here. All is well. I cannot tell you all. I wish that on no one ever, to be so vulnerable and in the hands of whom you trust. Thank you, Reverend Rebe. To be in the hands of people you're supposed to trust, with not just like something that belongs to you, but with your life.
Yeah.
My life was in his hands.
Yeah.
I can't.
And you had a split second, right? This isn't even time to try to.
No, we didn't have an hour to think. I don't even know how to describe the feeling of the balance of life and death being squarely in front of your face, like about what could happen. And I understood what he was saying to me. There's a chance this could go very well. There's a chance that this could not go well at all. And in that moment, the only thing I really had in my power was surrender.
But what a powerful thing to have, right?
Absolutely.
To have a relationship such that you know that you do what you need to do, I'm going to do what I need to do, and I trust the one that I'm doing what I need to do with. I trust that God is going to move and show up in me and in you so that we can come out of this thing all right. What a powerful tool that we can think of surrender as.
And the reason I'm pausing is because what I need y'all to know is that there is an uncomfortableness in the quiet. You have to be able to sit with the quiet, because that's where God will speak what to say, what to do, how to release, how to hold on, how to surrender. It's in the quiet. Being willing to just sit with that uncomfortable, awkward silence and just feel that. And know that even that is serving a purpose. Because if everything was going like this, if your life is going like this all the time and you're trying to fill every moment with words and movement and action and things you have no place for release. But I believe, and I go on to say that I believe the power and the conviction that I spoke in that affirmation of faith was birthed at the moment I released and just
Mhm.
sank into surrender. I always like to think of surrender of that, like you're standing on that cliff and you just lean back and just fall into God's hands. Like that to me is surrender. I talk about later in the book how the different definitions, a lot of times they make surrender being about the ceasing of force against something. But sometimes the surrender we need to do isn't about because we're trying to force something. Sometimes it's about just allowing what is to be, right? We're not necessarily pushing against, it's about letting go. Maybe we're the ones that are holding on tight. It's not we're pushing against something. We're trying to hold on to something that God's going, you don't need that anymore. Let it go. Right. So that place of surrender, that place, y'all, that's the place. Yes, the place of discomfort in the quiet. If you can sit in that place, and I see y'all over here. The quiet can be so loud. Come on and talk about it now.
And the thing is, sometimes the quiet also happens in the midst of all of the other noise. Right? So others can be spinning around you, and you still have to be able to center yourself in God and get to your place of quiet in the midst of everything.
It's like that center of the storm.
Mm-hmm.
They'll fly inside a hurricane and it'll be just as peaceful.
With craziness going on around. Right? And many of us are in that situation right now where it's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of just oddness, discomfort all around us, spinning. I mean, you watch the news, you'll be spinning around like a top, not knowing when you're going to stop. Absolutely. Right? But we have to still, or we have the capacity, right? We have the opportunity to still find our peace in God, to still trust that I trust portion within your circle. Yes. We have the ability to say, you know what? I see all of this, but God, I trust you. Speak to me now. There was about maybe a year and a half going on 2 years ago. I had a whole lot of stuff going on. A lot of things were coming to me at once. And I wasn't quite sure. It was a lot of choices, just a lot. And so I had to get to the point every day where I would say, okay, God, so now what's the next best thing? I can't do all of this stuff. It's a lot going on. I'm not quite sure, but I can come to you and say, what's the next best thing right now? Right? And so I got to the point where I realized it's not about me making the quote unquote right choice, but it's about me making the wise choice based on what God is telling me in this moment. You made the wise choice in saying, I'm going to trust God. I'm not going to try to ask you for another opinion. I'm not going to ask you about XYZ. I'm not going to ask for another surgeon because you came in here looking a little shook in the beginning, right? The wisdom said, in this moment, this is what you can do. You can pray and release this to me and trust. And there's power in that if we can remember that God has already given us so much of this. If we can remember that even as the world is going crazy, we don't have to. Absolutely. Right? You can look at crazy and be like, oh, I see you crazy, but this is what we're doing over here.
Protect your peace. I want to go back. I'm coming back to you, Neil. Got to know that there's intelligence beyond our intelligence. That's it. That is it. Neil, I heard you. You said he did that just before this call. You had to surrender just before. I got you. I mean, we are in real time. That's why I find it so interesting that no pandemic was even on my radar when I was writing this devotional. And yet here we are. And every topic has built up and led up to this. Yesterday, we talked about covered, not cast away. Dr. AnneMarie, how sometimes when God is hiding us and protecting us and grooming us and getting us ready, that we can feel that we've been cast away, but we're really just covered.
Because when the darkness of the seed, the seed is growing in the dark until it's time for it to come forth into the light. But the darkness is a hard space.
We showed the whole video of the germination process and walked through. God will cause all forces of the universe to conspire for our highest good. All things and working together. So now listen, as always, we bring the spiritual, and I want to bring some things in the natural to help us in this area, because clearly many of you are dealing with it. If it's not you, it's somebody you know, getting still and surrendering to the quiet. Then we ask God clearly, absolutely. You got to ask what's next. And I love what Dr. AnneMarie said about that, is that she didn't ask for the whole plan. She said, just what's next? Can you just tell me the next move? Because that's really all you need to concern yourself.
Honey,
probably couldn't handle it if he told you the whole thing anyway.
Absolutely not. This is my daily bread. Tell me what I need for today.
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 So let's look at the benefits and feel free to weigh in. These are things that have worked for me coming out of positive psychology and the realm of strategic intervention coaching. If they work for you, if they don't, take what you can and move it. You're able, some of the benefits, you're able to face challenges and remove barriers to developing a deeper connection to self. There is nothing like questioning yourself. When something comes up, when you face a challenge, when there's a hardship or a loss or whatever, a disappointment, and you feel it and you ask yourself, let's take my client I was talking about who was let go.
Mm-hmm.
This hurts. Yes, it hurts. Feel that. That hurts. Why would, of course it would hurt. Now you got to figure out moving forward and life and paychecks, but let's think about it. And when you think about it in the fullness, you face it and you realize this wasn't working for me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have that deeper connection of understanding yourself and even your manifestation process, which Reverend Dr. AnneMarie spoke to. You pray for things, you start manifesting them, but they show up differently. Now you're going to be more in line, mind, body, and spirit when things start moving and shaping and growing and differently. Now you don't have to be afraid of every time something shifts or changes because you trust I'm learning more about myself and this is all working together.
Yeah.
It strengthens your faith muscles, increases your spiritual growth. You spoke about that even in your own testimony of going from corporate greatness to ministerial greatness, how your spiritual growth had to develop and continue to flow and trust.
One of the things you mentioned earlier, something around muscles and building the muscle of this area. And it brought up immediately for me, muscle memory, right? That even in the midst of something that doesn't look exactly the same, if you've been in a practice and you've been conditioning, your muscle memory will kick in, and that faith muscle memory can kick in and fill in even when something doesn't look exactly the same. It's like, wait, this is kind of like this. I know how to lift. I know how to squat. I know how to bend. I know how to, whatever that is. If you're a boxer, you know how to do, right. Whatever that muscle memory is, if you've been strengthening your faith, it can push you to that next level.
Yes, all the way around. It allows more love to flow in and out of you. Love for God, love for yourself, and love for others. Surrendering, because what happens is a lot of times we talked about this area of control. Yeah. You will low-key be trying to control other people. You'll say you're trying to control the situation, but really you're trying to control other people.
Right.
And I hope what we get to is this place of understanding. I can't control anybody but myself. Like
I can barely do that.
Right.
You're on the wrong day. I don't even have the best of me together yet.
That's a full-time job. I cannot extend myself to trying to control. Don't you love that? That was a great one, wasn't it, Pastor? Strengthen all your faith muscles. That's it. I mean, the control, the ability to sit back and say, if I take my hand off of it, I still trust that the best thing can come from it. Yeah. And what I've learned in my own personal is that, you know, because one of the things I'll tell you, one of my growing edges, I mean, I'm so much better in it than in the last 6 years than I've ever been. But I always want to make sure people understand where I'm coming from. I just want to make sure you understand where I'm coming from. No, let me just make sure you understand where I'm coming from. And here's the thing. Sometimes they may, I mean, sometimes they may not. Sometimes it wasn't that they didn't understand. Maybe they didn't agree, you know, so there's all of that. And so just being able to trust that if I communicate effectively, put the truth and authentic intention into it and share that then it's going to be what's going to be.
Yeah.
Now, we don't miss each other because we're people, blah, blah, blah. But then trusting that if we miss it, I can come back and I can give you more. So maybe you need more to understand, but not trying to force this understanding in this moment.
Yeah.
People process at different levels and speeds and all that kind of stuff, right? So for me, it was just understanding if I can surrender into this moment, hear them, kind of ebb and flow with them. I don't have to be annoyed by them. They don't have to be annoyed. I'm just being honest. I don't have to be annoyed by me. I can meet them at that place of love. Like, I got issues, you got issues. We all have stuff that we have to work with. And you just learn to accept yourself you give that grace that God extends to us,
Yes.
and you just develop deeper and better relationships, I think, all the
And
way around.
this has been truly the season for that. One of my key words is grace. And on my desk in my office on campus, I have a small little thing that I wrote out saying to be gracious to myself and others. And
Mm,
as soon as we moved into this pandemic moment, that became my daily mantra, to be gracious to myself
mm,
and others, because we don't know, right? We don't know what anybody else is going through. But if we can operate from a place of grace and operate from a place of love, then we're giving that out, and God willing, it will return back to us. But even if it doesn't from that person, it
yeah.
will still come back to us in
Absolutely.
another way.
Absolutely. I love that. Savala says, I always say to myself, God, your track record of victory in my past is too consistent for me to believe there's not also a victory in this. That's, I mean, that's the power of our testimony,
Yep.
right? That's that
All
look
things.
back.
That's all things.
Come on now. Come on. We're going to get her to preach up in here.
I'm holding.
You're so funny. I'm holding. All right. Our next one. Surrender promotes greater self-acceptance and tolerance, which to me rolls into the last one about love. It's going to be hard to tolerate, love others when you can't tolerate and love yourself. There has to be this place in you where you allow yourself to breathe. It doesn't mean that you're perfect. Doesn't mean you got it all together. We all will be a work in progress until Jesus comes back or whatever you believe. But here's the thing. If you can accept that I might not be where I want to be, but I'm doing my best every day
The
to,
best.
the self-excavation that I can do a little bit every day to work. When I know better, I do better.
Yep.
All those things, that gives you a greater tolerance to know. We were talking about this the other day. A lot of times, and I hope you all will take this with you, because as things start opening up and we've been isolated away from each other, and now we're about to throw a whole bunch of people back. Not too soon now, y'all. We're about to go back out into public domains and be around each other. I think you don't forget, we have been siloed away for like 2.5, almost 3 months. Something happens when you just throw people back together. So we don't know what people have gone through mentally,
Right.
spiritually, emotionally. We're going to have to use some gentleness and kindness and grace, because we have no idea who lost who
Right.
was sick, who went down, like who lost.
The grief process is so broken right now because we aren't able to grieve as fully and to bear all of those things.
Absolutely.
There's going to be a lot. And so, this acceptance of self and tolerance for others is that graciousness that I'm saying. Be gracious to myself and others. This is exactly that. Yeah.
And we have to, and for those of you who are with us for the topic of the walking wounded, I firmly believe we're going to see a lot of that, because as you mentioned, we didn't get to process a lot. We had to keep it moving. I mean, you keep it moving. So let's remember that grace and space is going to be of the utmost importance. We still love people. We have to learn to love. Some people you do have to love from a distance. I'm not going to disagree with you on that.
Well,
allow God to speak to you about that, because sometimes, if you got a cutoff spirit, if you have a cutoff ministry, you be like, and God may be saying, protect yourself, but there's still work to be done here.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't even realize all of the traumas that we've had to go through in this short season of having so many things hit that we haven't given ourselves the time and place to sit with and to process and to work through. Because even under non-pandemic, kind of situations, okay?
We were talking about that brown communities already have so much trauma. The walking wounded generations are back. So yes, there's very little that I find anymore that if you get into it with somebody, that you're ever talking about what you're really talking about right in front of you. It's all the experiences. It's the feeling of lack of respect. It's a whole bunch of stuff that's coming with that. And that's why that grace and space and acceptance and tolerance for others is going to be really, really key moving forward. The last one I just share is just that it sharpens, forget that period, that sharpens your ability there to sense the peace of God. And that speaks back to, y'all, what we were talking about, the pause. Yeah. There's no way to really sense if you're doing all the talking. There's no way to sense if you're the one, if you're constantly in motion. you know, there's a reason we have a Selah day. There's a reason that we have a day of rest. There's a reason we take Sabbath. There's a reason that, and to be honest with you, and I don't know if any of y'all agree, but outside of people dying and getting sick and the different, you know, ill things that have come of this, I've personally have enjoyed the pause on life where things just kind of, everybody just sit down for it was like the big, everybody just sit down for a second. Just the world stopped moving so fast, seemingly, just like life just kind of slowed down a little bit. And I know, hear my heart. I don't mean that I wanted you to lose your job or any of those things, but I'm just saying sometimes it was almost like a reset button. It was like a pause.
Yep.
It's like everything was just, and we just kept ramping, and just, okay, everybody just sit down.
And for some of us, and I'm going to put the us on me, I am us. Our pause has not come as much as we'd like for it to yet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I was literally on spring break when Penn State sent an email to all of us saying, this was on a Wednesday, saying by Monday, when we are again on spring break, we were going to have to move online. And so I've been going at a record pace, still doing all of these things. And I'm looking forward to the pause. Yes. I'm checking myself like, wait a minute, this is the season 2 pause.
I want my pause, right?
I have a thing that I've posted on somewhere, probably Instagram, but it says there's power in the pause and there's power in stepping back and taking a breather and implementing a break and taking some time off of social media and downtime and taking time for myself and recharging your energy in restarting, redefining, realigning yourself, and in recentering. There is power that we can find in this pause if we focus in on it and don't get so anxious to move, right? Don't begin to worship busyness, which is what a lot of folks do.
You missed it. I see, you should have been here. We had that discussion about busyness not being a spiritual gift.
It's not.
But I tell you what, it's funny that you mentioned that, because on the one hand, I talk about the pause, but like you, ministry, everything went to online, right? Well, thankfully, we're a ministry that's always been online. We've had some, but everything had to go online. So you're right. I had this opposing truths of being really, really busy and working in ministry, and we got to get all this, and we got to make sure people feel connected and touched and loved, and and then over here, everything else kind of, and I just found this weird flow where I was able to be even more effective and more efficient, because even though this was, now the first 2-3 weeks, it was all high. But then after that, it was like, and that's how I was able to do this, because God started telling me, I want you to go through this devotional. I was like, how am I going to do that in the middle of doing all of this? And somehow it just worked and it just flowed. And so what I hope that you all are doing, and I'm praying, sister, and standing in agreement with you right now, that your pause comes real soon.
Honey, it's coming. I already set a date. If it hasn't started already, June 1st is my pause. Because we just turned in grades this week.
Right.
I just had a student defend her dissertation yesterday. Like it's still been crazy, but I was like, this is not of God. So we gonna get ourselves a pause.
We gonna get the pause. We were standing to believe with you. Some of us didn't get a pause. Yes, Pastor, I know you did not get a pause. We are praying that you will get a pause.
We have to take it, right? We have to prioritize and love ourselves enough. And again, the we is me and us, and the us is me, to do that, right? And to trust that when we pause, God is still moving and God is still active. So our pausing doesn't stop what God is doing. Absolutely. And so that's powerful. That's really powerful.
Absolutely. And so here's the other part of the power of surrender. And hello to all of those of you coming in. I just pray that you will go back and watch this from the beginning. Thank you so much, Reverend Riri. I hope that you all will go back and catch the beginning, because it was such a powerful share about her own personal testimony. By the way, when were you in Cincinnati? When you
95 to 2003, pretty much. I went down to Orlando for a couple of years in the middle.
I was working in news then at Scripps at the CPO. I was anchoring the news at CPO from 95 to the end of 98.
Oh, absolutely.
You were right down the street.
Exactly. Right down at Twin Towers.
That's right. 6 degrees of separation. Isn't that funny? God gives us peace in the pause. And what I'm hoping that you all will do with the content that's shared today, My girl's out of school June 3rd. That's going to be your pause. Well, yay, we celebrate with you.
Yes,
And
yes,
kudos to all
indeed.
you
Yes.
parents who are doing your own thing and working and then homeschooling in crisis too. All of y'all, kudos. I know.
Yes.
I just can't even imagine. But I pray that what you will do is look for opportunities to surrender.
Mhm.
And they may look as big as the situation I shared. It may look as different as going from one lane of vocation to another and trusting what that may be or what that shift looks like. It may be just a decision that you have to make as soon as you hang up off of this live stream today. There is power in surrendering. And especially when you know that you're surrendering to a great God that knows more about it than you ever could.
Absolutely.
And that's why, whatever your faith platform is, you got to be solid. You got to be solid and know it. I was thinking about today, Jesus, when we talk about him in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he
Not my
knew
will.
that he had a ministry
Mm.
of helping and serving people. And I really believe, but from every account I've read in the Bible and about the Bible and just about Jesus, that he really enjoyed being with the people and really enjoyed ministering to the people. But understanding that part of your ministry means laying down your life, and for him physically laying down your life. And as you said, having to come to that place where you say, not my will. If this cup can pass, oh, please.
Please take it.
But yet, and that to me models that whole thing. Feel it. He felt it. He was bleeding. He was sweating blood. He felt it. And yet said in the surrender, but not my will.
Mm-hmm.
That's the place where we're trying to get to, y'all. And it's not something that happens overnight. Sometimes it's those baby steps. It's that building of that muscle, 5 pound to 10 pound.
Yep.
10 pound to 15, and building it up until you get to that place where you can lift bigger weights. The seeming small moments of surrender prepare us for the big. That's it. That's that weight. You do a 5 pound,
Yep.
then you do a 10 pound, then you do a 20 pound. Any final words you want to share? Thank you so much for taking the leap of faith, surrendering into this opportunity.
Yes, surrendering in and just trusting that God had something, right?
Amen.
And even in the ask, I had to check myself and say there is a reason that the ask came. And so if there is any way to continue to walk into that and to be open to what God is doing and how God is moving and how God might be shifting even now that I don't know, right? I'm again going to trust that all of these things are working together for my good. And that ultimately that's going to be for God's good. So even on my walk this morning, I was just saying, God, if at least one person gets touched or has something that they're able to take from this, then that was worth it. So thank you for creating this space and for reminding us that surrendering is a powerful tool that we're giving to be able to trust God as fully as possible. And even when we get anxious, even when our fears begin to come, that we turn back again where God tells us to be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication to make our requests known to God. And then the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard, protect our hearts and our mind, right? That's the power that we have as believers. And so I hope that we can walk and live into that as fully as possible.
That's beautiful. Would you mind praying over everyone today, that those who are on, those who will be watching on the replay, I just saw a lot of you saying, this was me just before I got on. Wow, I was just dealing with this, and I'm telling you, yep, all of you, I think we all, that's the beauty of community, is that we can all come together and be reminded you're not alone. You're not the only one dealing with this. You're not the only one struggling with surrender. You're not the only one having to make these decisions, but we sure can stand together in agreement. Would you pray?
Sure. God, we thank you so much for this day. We thank you for this time and this space and this opportunity to gather together through this platform. God, we thank you for the creation and we thank you for the vision that you gave to Sister Jeanette. We thank you for this opportunity to be witnesses to each other of your goodness, of your grace, and of the reality that you have never failed us yet. God, allow us to remember that as we face new challenges, as we face new difficulties, and as we celebrate the current victories. Allow us to not get so caught up in the trouble that we forget the triumph. Remind us, God, allow us to center ourselves in on you and allow us to trust you with our full hearts everything that you have given and everything that you are doing is ultimately working for our good. God, we thank you and we ask that you will continue to have your way. I pray for everybody who's able to see this now and for those that will watch it later. God, have your way in our lives. We'll give you all praise, honor, and glory. And it's in your name that we pray. Let everybody say amen.
Amen. Amen. I've got a couple of announcements. Y'all don't jump off. Would you mind waiting for me in the green room? Do you have to?
Certainly.
Okay.
I'll be here. Reverend Patrick, I would love to hear you sing that All to Jesus I Surrender.
Oh, yeah, right. And then you could dance. The two team up.
as we know. Right.
All right. Thank you so much. That is awesome. She's just a beautiful spirit, beautiful soul. Thank you, Reverend Riri. Thank you, Pastor, for introducing me to people in your circle. Bless. Yes. Make sure she sees. I'm sure she's looking right now. Thank you for speaking to us, Reverend Dr. AnneMarie. What a powerful woman of God. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Mingo, for your awesome testimony and words of wisdom. Michael, thanks you as well. What is this? Watch out. What are you saying? Thank you. Absolutely. My pleasure, Shonda. Because you're going to be singing and dancing. We'll work that out on a future stream, Pastor. We'll work that out on a future stream. Don't get so caught up in the trouble that you forget the triumph. I love it. I love it, Elder. I love it. Just a couple of announcements to remind you all that tomorrow is Self-Care Sunday. So go to church, do whatever you do for Self-Care Sunday. Make sure it's a self-care day. And I don't mean just your body and mind, body, and spirit. Make sure that you're ministering to all the parts of you, because it's more important now than ever before. Also, I know that we touch on these subjects and they can bring stuff up. You've heard Dr. AnneMarie say, hey, my therapist this. You've heard me say, my therapist that. I got a therapist and a coach and that. You need tools, you need people. And sometimes you're trying to bear weights that you don't need to bear alone. So I want to make sure that you either email me so that I can help you figure out what is your next move. Do you need a coach? Do you need a therapist? Do you need pastoral care? What is it that you need? I want to make sure that you never watch these and then you just kind of go out and now you're floating and I don't know what's next steps. In fact, my plan is, and I'm still prayerful about this, but my plan is after the end of 21 days, which can you believe, y'all, will end on Tuesday. Our 21 days ends on Tuesday. I want to do one where I call back all the women who were facilitators to kind of just do a group talk to talk about the testimonies behind the scenes, the things that came out of this for them personally or through people that were touched by it. I love to hear, and you all have been sharing stories, and just kind of circle up with the women to find out what those testimonies and things are. And then after that, I want to get together a therapist, a pastor, a coach, which would be me, and for us to just kind of take your questions and help give you information so you know, how do I go about even looking for a therapist? How do I even start that process? How do I know what kind of coach is right for me based in what, a brand of coaching? Like, how do I figure that out? How do I figure out how to get plugged in spiritually? These are important questions, and I want to make sure that you all are armed with information for that. If you want to join the my tribe, the Empowerment Tribe, make sure you text release to 22999. That'll just tell you about the spiritual pop-ups that we do. Sometimes there'll be coach scopes. Sometimes there'll be group coaching things. There'll be live stream, because as this evolves and continues and we all kind of go back to our regular day-to-day, this may not be an everyday thing. So I want to make sure we stay connected so that we can still get our empowerment on, right? And then lastly, we will be back after Self-Care Sunday, we will be back on Monday. And on Monday, we'll be tackling the topic, You Are Enough. You are enough. And I will have a sister friend with me who is I met her when I was working with Fred Hammond. She was in marketing and brand management and those types of things, but she's also a gifted teacher of the word, and she's also a gifted coach. Narisha Liggins will be with me. So I hope that you'll join me Monday for that. All right, let me pop and see if you all have anything else you want me to. What do you mean? No, we're gonna have to do something different. I don't know. I'm praying about what that is. Bethel AME Baltimore welcomes you. Yes, we are online. Bethel, the number 1.org. If you need a place to watch some church. Thank you so much for being with us, Reverend AnneMarie. She's seeing it. She's hearing it. Thank you for your precious time. I know you all have a lot to get done on these Saturdays. And so I appreciate that you all spend the time. You spend the time. Yes, I know, Neil, already the 21 days has flown by. Monday is a holiday. Absolutely. But we going to be here doing what we do. So 10 a.m., a regular Monday. Come on, do it before you hit them ribs. Excited about Monday. All right. Sounds good. Love you all to life. There's nothing you can do about it. Not absolutely one thing you can do about it. When you go out, please stay safe. Please surrender. Listen to God about your comings and your goings. Please practice safe matriculating amongst other people. Okay. Mask, whatever you need to do. Stay safe. Stay safe. Stay safe. Yes, you have a mayor. Yes, you have a governor. Yes, you have a president. But let God guide you and how you move and flow through these times. All right. I love you all to life. I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.